Hey there, all you creepers and reapers. Welcome to another episode of the Femme Fatalities. I'm your co-hostess, Anna, and I'm here with...
Hey, Grieflings and Frightlings, it's Margaret, and we're going on a bit of a voyage today, or a journey. Anna, what movies are we talking about today?
Well, I hope you brought your calculator, because everything's going to be divisible by 28. 28 days, 28 weeks, 28 years. We're talking about all these time frames that happen a little later than now. Before we get too much into it, lots of trigger warnings. So, starting from the top and working down, animal violence, animal attacks, viral passing from one to another, blood, bodily fluid contact, sort of zombies, I guess, military violence, abuse of power. What else?
Yes, cruelty to animals in the first one, rage, anger, the collapse of society, isolation,
Lack of resources.
lack of resources, being attacked by other humans, stressful, tragic situations that you could be caught in.
And I also think that for me, the first one, particularly 28 Days Later, it feels like you're traveling through this along with the protagonist. So it's like you're part of the team. I really enjoy that type of thematic experience. But if that's something that you may find to be disturbing or traumatizing, you may not want to watch this. Also, if you've seen this film series, go ahead and continue with us. If you've not and you want to watch it before, take a break, watch the movies, come back. Or if you want to see what we have to say and then watch them, by all means, we invite you to do that as well. It's whatever you're comfortable with. But I think the best thing we can do is just talk about each one. So we'll start with 28 Days Later. We meet.
Trigger warning. I forgot to add discussion and attempted sexual assault.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's it's great. I appreciate that you added that. And so okay, movie opens up. I will say primates are a trigger for me. So had a hard time in the beginning. These kind of do-gooder animal activist types break into a lab. They're trying to free these primates, but they've been infected with the rage virus. Then really the pathos and the idea, which is very prominent in the medical research arena even today, is that our genetic makeup is very similar to specific animals. So that's why there's such a prevalence of using primates, lab rats, and beagles, because that's closest to human genetic makeup. So anyway, they're like trying to help these little primates, and they get out and somebody gets bit by one and the virus starts spreading. They've been infected by rage. So bodily fluid exchange, a bite, you've got it. The concept is that you get sick and then you're full of rage and you're spreading it, and then you deteriorate rapidly and then you die. So that's kind of the concept. And then we meet poor Jim, who's been in the hospital from a courier biking accident and has no idea what's happened. He wakes up, everybody's gone, the city's totally desolate, and he's trying to figure out what's happening. And then eventually he runs into Selena and Frank's daughter, and they kind of team up and they try to navigate somewhere to find other people and safety, all while trying to survive and combat the rage virus people, which I think for intents and purposes we should refer to as the infected, because they're not. And tell me if you feel differently. I don't feel that they're zombies because they're not reanimated. They're still animated. Yeah. They're just infected with a disease.
Yes, I agree. They're infected.
Yeah. And I guess I should say they're infected with a virus. It's not, I shouldn't refer to it as a disease. They have the virus. So they're trying to navigate it. They run into all sorts of trouble. And then eventually we do find that they've found somewhere where they're fairly safe and they're trying to find help. And that's how the movie ends. So I have to say, this is my favorite of the series. Um, the 28 weeks, which we'll get into in a little bit, I think is the most action packed, and to me is most representative of humanity. But I really like the 28 Days Later. I think it's a classic. We have a young Cillian Murphy, which is great. But I think that it's showing the desire that humans have still to connect with each other, even in the worst of times. And I do feel like the other movies display that in a more twisted way, whereas this is much more genuine. What do you think?
I agree. This is my favorite out of the three. The cinematography and the music in this one make this film. It drives the emotionality of the film home, the tension, the like as far as a horror movie goes, the cinematography and the music is what, like you said, you're on this journey. You are like, oh my gosh, like when Frank gets infected and you feel that, or
Yeah.
when Selena is in the castle with his daughter and the military chief guy has said, no, like I promised them women, you're going to do this. And so she's giving the girl those meds to be like, this is all I can give you. So viewers, she gives her, I think it's Vicodin or something, because they've been told you're going to put on dresses and we're going to take advantage. We're going to rape you. And so she's giving the girl like, here, take these. Like, this is the only way I can protect you. It's going to numb you. And even, right, just Jim too, like trying to get to them and how it's filmed, like with the infected, like you're there, you're like, oh my gosh, is he gonna save her? Selena, what is she gonna do? And you're really rooting for how the three of them become a family. I think it's excellently done. I feel like this is, we see the hope, I feel like, in the creators in this one, like how can people come together, because it's Danny Boyle, the director, and Garland, Alex Garland is the writer of Days and Years. I feel like Days, we still see their hope. We still see maybe their faith. When we get to Years, I feel like we are seeing the life trajectory of both creators, the grief that they both experienced, the losses, because Years is much different. And I wonder if, and people that have seen it, let us know, because if you're fans of both of these men's work, which I know I am, I was going in expecting more of a Days Later when I went to see Years, and I was like, oh fuck, like this one, this is not a movie about an infection and hope for humanity. This is about the despair of humanity.
I mean, for me, I guess, well, I'll hold on. We'll talk more about that because I have really strong opinions too. I think that we're somewhat aligned. So I guess if we go on to 28 weeks later, so we come across, there's still people that are infected. They've reopened an area that's dubbed safe, and so they're getting people back. Now, the opening of the film is in a kind of an abandoned farm cottage and barn where survivors of the virus and those that aren't infected have found each other. They built their own little community, and then the infected find them and they're coming, and
there's immunity. Were you going to touch on that? We learned that some people have to do with their like different color eyes, that somehow they can become a carrier and maybe be a little bit impacted. We see mom starting to deteriorate after she's infected, but overall she's, so please continue. So we're at the cottage.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you bring up mom, so that's really important. So we've got Alice, which once again to me was a little Easter egg because Resident Evil Alice the key to all life, right? Um, so I enjoyed that. And then we meet what I think it's Tammy and Andy are the kids. And also her husband, whose name I conveniently forgot because he pissed me off in the movie. I hadn't seen this movie in the longest time, and then when I watched it, I'm like, oh, this is why I was so mad after I saw it, because I just remember, I think maybe I was in high school when this came out, and we went to see it, and I just remember leaving the theater so pissed off, and I couldn't remember why, and then immediately I was like, oh yeah, that's why. So, long story short, the infected are in there. They've sent the children to live with the grandparents or to a safe zone. I
Yeah,
think
they
it's
were
to a
like,
safe zone. Yeah, like some kind of safe zone. Um, so husband runs away, and we essentially assume he's like let his wife get infected and whatever else happens. And then the next scene, we see the kids coming to the safe zone. Husband works at the safe zone. A lot of U.S. military presence there. And they're trying to kind of establish protocols for health and safety. To me, watching it now, it had very much a COVID pandemic vibe. Which another trigger, the pandemic. If memories of the pandemic trigger you, do not watch these movies. Honestly, for me, it was much easier to watch them now, having experienced a pandemic in real life, because I'm like, oh yeah, that's accurate. Yeah, that's what they do. It doesn't seem as farcical as it did before the pandemic happened. But anyway, so they're doing all these testing. The kids escape. They go back to the house they lived in. They discover mom is hiding out there. Bring her back. And as Margaret mentioned, she has semi-immunity. They're going to try and test and figure out what's going on. And then through a series of very unfortunate events, mom gets killed. Dad gets infected. A bunch of other people get infected too. And then we're back to square one, like 28 days later, and trying to figure out how to get them to safety. So, the other thing that you mentioned, the anomaly, is that mom and son both have different colored eyes. And that's what we're thinking is kind of leading into some sort of immunology pathology kind of systemic cure, but we never find out because, mom's dead, and then the kids are just trying to survive, not very successfully. So yeah, I think that this one to me is much more of when something tragic happens, not even on the scale of a pandemic, but even in our lives. How do we rebuild? This is a new experience. Is there really an adequate blueprint for this? And how do we handle the obstacles that we meet along the way?
yes, and there's a lot of obstacles as they feel like they have the safe zone.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, the kids go and they end up finding mom. So now mom is going to be studied. And the kids, dad said that she died. So now their whole family unit has been ruptured because dad's like, no, mom died. I couldn't save her. He was running. He was trying to survive. He took off, let a lot of people die in his fear. And now here's mom, and she's angry. And how quickly contagions can spread, and they couldn't get ahead of it. Like that went fast. Like that.
Yeah, and I think also it's the whole, which we see this throughout the movies, that once the infection starts, the only option is to annihilate the risk. So I feel like we keep seeing that same behavior and action over and over and over through the movies. At some point, you would think that there would be an understanding that this plan of action is not effective. So I think that does speak a lot to human behavior, that repetition. What is it? Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over. That phrase, I think that really is well displayed throughout all of the movies.
Yes. And like you said, this one was more action packed. This one, right, we
Mm-hmm.
have the doctor that's trying to save the kids. Jeremy Renner's
Mm-hmm.
character who also wants to save the kids. And then I always mess up his name. Idris
Idris
Elba's.
Elba.
Yeah.
I
Because
was
he's like,
like,
no, I really don't want to do this, but fine, you're my buddy. I'll do this. Yeah.
yeah,
Love him.
yeah.
So again, this movie's like, I feel like it's asking, what would you do if you were faced in this? Would you run? Would you hide? Would you try to get out? And the doctor knowing that this kid needs to get out because he could possibly
Mm-hmm.
be a cure. And viewers, listeners, if you watch these, Weeks is not considered canon. It is not.
No.
It was done by another writer. It's done by another creator.
Mm-hmm.
So if you watch and you're like, oh yeah, some of these characters might pop back up in years. No, because it's somebody different. And you could see that because it's not as,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the first one was very poetic. This one's it feels more like American action movie.
It does. Yeah, and I think like 28 Days Later is, like you said, it's poetic, it's about community. 28 Weeks, I feel like, in a sense, makes us question what's going on, morality and ethics of others, and how we feel in relation to that. So it's a very individualized, I think, an individualized goal in terms of how the person perceives it as they watch it. Like, what is a person getting out of it? Whereas the first one, you feel like you're along for the ride. You feel like everybody in the theater is there with you too. Like everybody and everything is together and we're all rooting for something positive to happen. And then we get to 28 years later. So I will say, to me, the best thing about the movie was the fact that Ralph Fiennes was in it. I did not like this movie at all.
It wasn't a horror. This wasn't a horror movie. I feel like this was a grief movie about our main character, the young boy, his grief with his mother and his dad too.
Yeah. Well,
So,
and that's, to me, this was like, it was almost like a coming of age film. That's what I felt like. This is a coming of age movie for this boy whose mother died and whose dad had an affair. This is exactly it. You know, Dr. Kelson is the father figure or adult or, you know, mentor that he needs at the time to help him through his grief. And that's, I totally agree with you. This had nothing to do with the rage virus. I was very, very disappointed about those that were infected because I'm like, the first two films, even though they were different directors, indicated that the pathology of this virus breaks down your human tissue at some point and you just die. So I'm like, how are they having sex? How are they surviving? How do they know to eat worms? This is not logical to me. And generally speaking,
they evolve, right? That's how I took that. To jump in there, I took it that they evolved, but it was confusing because you have the fat ones that eat worms and the one that has the alpha, like the faster
that rips the
one. So I was just checking with you, like, was that evolution or did you get something else from that?
To me, I was like, this is not what we're used to. This doesn't make any sense. And I guess from my perspective, and, you know, I think when we were in the thanatology grad program together, you know, we both did a fair amount of research, for instance, like on the HIV/AIDS pandemic, right? And one thing that has increased longevity for those with HIV or AIDS is medical intervention. So my perspective is they're evolving, but there's no medical intervention. It was just really hard for me to follow and understand. And also the random clips of like wartime film. It was like, is Danny Boyle trying to make an art piece or a movie about people that are zombified, with this rage virus? Because it just it was not aligned with my expectation.
I love
Yeah.
how you say like there's all these pieces that did not come together. It's a coming of age story, so thank you for saying that. That feels like it has these zombies or infected put in, and then the war too, where then are you touching on, because if you listen to, I believe you can find it on YouTube, it's a poem, I believe it was written by Robert Kipling, I could be wrong, but it is actually this poem that is meant to be recited in the cadence of people marching when it was during a war, I believe, in South Africa, like 1917 or something. And it's meant to reflect, I believe, the madness that can happen to soldiers. So then there's that added component. It is creepy. Like, it is an unnerving poem to listen to on its own. But you're like, where does this fit in? Because we learn England has been isolated. The rest of the world is going along. They got cell phones, they got social media, they got all this. England has gone way back in time because nobody's coming for them. They're just going to let the virus play out. And like you said, then where were still the doctors? Like, how are we rebuilding?
Yeah. It's very strange. And you would think that at some point they would attempt to communicate with the outside world, especially knowing that the military, like, we know that at some point Spike learns that the military comes around to check. So you know that there is an outside world, right? And there's no attempt to communicate. The other thing too is like these residents of the island, at some point, they're going to run out of people and inbreeding will become an issue. So to me, it just didn't make a lot of sense. Like these traditions, it's only been 28 years. It didn't, I was having a really hard time kind of making sense of a lot of it just because it was so different. I went in with the expectation that, okay, well, we've got some originals from the first one. It's going to be like a beautiful love letter to the movie. And it wasn't at all. It was definitely, I would like to know what they were going through personally when it was written, because I think that would shed a lot of light on the context of the film itself.
I wonder if they've shared that. So viewers, listeners, if you know, link whatever sources you have, share, let us know. Because I've talked about, right, Mr. Oh my God, I'm sucking with names today. Oz Perkins. He often will share, like, this is what I was going through. So then, like, I know you haven't seen The Monkey yet, and you might not, because I know you got thing with primates, but he shared this is a movie about his grief, about losing his parents. And then you go, oh, okay, I see this. And he's like, and he's all the characters. So then you're like, okay, this makes sense when you're like, what's going on here? Like, what was, because then, like, as you touch on these pieces that don't make sense, we didn't need the two different kinds of infected. We didn't need to have the lady having the baby, like the infected having babies, but the baby was non-infected, unless that was touching on mother still having her empathy when she had cancer. So we learned that Spike's mom has cancer. She's dying. He gets her to the crazy doctor who's not crazy. He just looks crazy because he's learned how to keep the infected away from him. And I loved that character because he's honoring death. Yeah. So his whole character is he burns the bodies, he cleans the bones, and then he's making this beautiful monument. Like, I loved that. Mm-hmm. If the whole point was Spike and Mom getting there and Spike doing his grief ritual and saying goodbye, that would have been a beautiful story, but it gets convoluted with all these other pieces that didn't make sense.
Well, and like the scene where they're asleep and one of the worm eaters comes up and you find out that Spike's mom has killed him. And I'm like, oh my God, now they only send men and boys out, but I wonder if that's what contributed to her illness. Maybe she has some immunity and she was like a great female warrior when she was younger and she would take care of the infected and then she got blood on her and that's why she's so sick now. Because I feel like that would have made it really interesting and kind of cool. And then Spike's whole perception would be like, oh my gosh, I have to continue being a warrior like my mom and making meaning of like her eventual death. I feel like that could have really added something to it. But no, it just kind of fell flat. And yeah, the whole like infected that's pregnant, to me, it's like they're expressing what we associate with human behavior, but we know that they're full of rage. So I just don't. It didn't make a lot of sense to me.
I wonder if Danny Boyle and Alex Garland have evolved in different ways, right? Because I took, so Alex Garland has talked about like femininity, motherhood, and that whole concept. So I took Mom, Jodie Comer, who's fabulous in this movie, when she kills the slug fat, whatever, infected, has that mothering instinct, like that no matter how sick she gets, she's going to have this drive to protect her child. That's how I took that. But then, and we can see that when she takes the non-infected baby that's born. I don't know why that got fit in. I do know too that Alex Garland, he did Annihilation. We know he's a cosmic horror guy, and he's blending with Danny Boyle, who did do a space horror, but Danny Boyle's not cosmic horror in the essence that I really think Alex Garland, and you haven't seen Men yet, but that one gets into some really bizarre cosmic horror places. I wonder if you're touching on how these two masters in their own rights, their styles didn't quite gel and they weren't able to flesh out how to make that come together in a cohesive way.
Yeah. And I think, sometimes cheesecake is better with a bunch of strawberry topping. Sometimes it's better plain. So maybe it could just be the case of that. But it did, when the scene with the baby happened, my immediate thought was, have they been watching Jurassic Park? Because life finds a way, right? And that's a huge theme throughout all the Jurassic films. So maybe it was still, I don't want to say a nod to those movies, but a nod to the idea of, at the end of the day, life will still find a way. But then it's like, to me too, if the mother with the rage virus had this child and was just there with it, I should assume she'd probably just kill it as soon as it started crying, right? Because she's full of rage. So I just don't, I found it to be very strange.
Yeah. Pieces did not make sense. Oh no. Okay, we're back. Thank you for standing by. We had a few technical issues. Okay, so back into the 28 days.
Yes. So Margaret had something she wanted to bring up, and I'm I don't think I could say it any better than you did.
The Jimmies. What? Like I think that's what I left after we went and saw it. We were like, okay, I thought Jimmy was going to be a bigger character. I thought this was going to be about Jimmy because he starts the movie, and we just learn he starts a Jimmy cult when everybody's cut off, but somehow they have access to blonde wigs or something. I don't
Yeah,
know. Thoughts on the Jimmies?
and they're ninjas too. We can't forget that. And it was just it didn't make any sense at all. It was, and I guess maybe that was his coming of age, and how he survived. But it was just weird. And now I'm like, okay, so Spike's gonna become a Jimmy now too. And once again, they know that the military is patrolling. They know that there's a whole world out there. Why aren't they trying to figure out how to get there? I don't know.
It's weird.
It's
It
just,
kind of has the Village vibes where, right,
yeah.
in the Village, you learn that this group of people wants to be isolated
Mm-hmm.
from modern society. So I
Yeah.
wonder if you're touching into maybe some Village vibes that the
Mm-hmm.
elders want to go back to the way things were before technology. So they're
Yeah.
choosing
Then
to isolate the children.
could very well be that. I mean, that would have made a heck of a lot of sense, though, if we would have seen that, like, at the end. It's just, it just was different. And that's okay, right? Because I'm sure that someone is listening right now and they loved 28 Years Later, and by all means, I think that's great. You know, my cup of tea isn't maybe the same type of tea everybody else wants to drink, and that's all right.
Yeah, I agree. Like, it was, I gave it, I think, on my letterbox 3 out of 5. I was like, okay, it was. Would I watch it again? Probably not. Would I say I liked it? It it was different. If you're, I didn't want to say if you're into cosmic horror because it really didn't have that. If you're an Alex Garland fan, watch it. If you're a Danny Boyle fan,
Yeah,
watch it.
iffy. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's like, to me, it was like post-punk meets Andy Warhol meets Lord of the Flies. That's how I would best sum it up.
that love that
Yeah.
definition. It's a great definition.
Yeah. It's just, it's different. And also my whole thing is like, they have vegetation on the island. Why are they even going back to the mainland? You could raise rabbits, you can raise birds, you have all these resources. You can mill your corn, you can store your wheat. Why do you even need to go shoot the antelope if you have all these other resources that you're not using? But I guess for me, that's the assumption, and that could be different, right? Because they're in the UK, and, you know, being from the United States, to me, I'm like, oh, these resources are readily available where I live. So it could be totally different there, but that was just at least my thought process. Like, you're not breeding rabbits, you're not breeding squirrels. Like, don't understand. But maybe they're not readily available.
I take it as more of that coming of age, like,
Yeah.
because didn't like one of the town elders tell Spike's dad, we normally do this at this age, and he's too young, and his dad was like, no, he's ready, he's ready, he's ready. So it seemed like they were training the young men to be
Yeah.
ready to go do this thing. And like you said, why aren't they breeding? Maybe, like you said, maybe they don't have the resources to feed the livestock, so they're not doing that. It's
Yeah.
an interesting movie.
Yeah, it is. And I think too, from my perspective, like, I live on the East Coast. This Where I live, it is a large city now, but we're surrounded by rural communities, and it's not uncommon coming of age thing where you, if your family hunts, you go out and you get your first deer, but then you bring it home and you use every part of it. And then I'm like, okay, well, if they're going for these animals, why aren't they bringing multiple back and smoking it and storing it? And I couldn't understand. It seemed like they're working so hard for these resources, but we're not seeing what they're doing with them. And it almost seems like all for naught if that's the case.
Yeah, it was interesting. It's almost like they went back so far, and I wonder if that's
Mm-hmm.
something you're picking up on too. Is that Spike is starting to question this? Okay, there's this doctor.
Mm-hmm.
You say he's crazy. We don't know that he's crazy. There's a doctor. Why aren't we exploring this resource? Why aren't we seeing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's crazy. This is not going to work. Or actually, no. If it was a whole movie about the doctor, again, like I
Mm-hmm.
said, if this was Spike grief movie to the doctor
Yeah.
with his mom, I would have been all for that. We didn't need the
Mm-hmm.
zombie or the infected. We didn't need
Yeah.
so much more of it. It could have started with dad sending Spike out or them
Mm-hmm.
going on their thing shorter and then Spike being like, okay, I'm going to take mom.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, just the whole kind of going back to the life finds a way thing. If you look even at the movie titles of each movie, 28 days, that's a woman's menstrual cycle. 28 weeks, 7 months, that's typically when a pregnancy is viable to sustain life if born early. 28 years, your 28th year is when you're officially moving into pivotal moments of your adulthood, right? So I think that the perspective in relation to life, the first two carried on more with that. But when you think about it, the age of 28, right, that is when you come of age into your full adulthood, right? You're transferring from a young adult to just a standard adult. So you're between young adulthood and middle age. So that once again nods to this whole concept of coming of age.
Ooh, I like that perspective. I did not catch that.
So, and I don't know, like, in the order that they came out is probably my preference. Like, the first one I think is pivotal in terms of this horror genre. The second one's a great action movie. Third one, would I watch it again? No. What are your,
Yeah.
how does it align for
Yeah.
you? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in all of the movies, in all of the series, is there a character that you most identify with?
I think I'm going to have to go to one, Selena.
Mm-hmm.
You?
I think I would go to two. Scarlet, she has really good intentions. Um, but sometimes the path to not the best result is paved by good intentions. So definitely that hit a note with me for sure. Yeah. So I think this is a very interesting movie. And I have to ask you, because I know you've seen the first two pre-COVID also, when you watched them again, did you find it was easier or more difficult to watch?
Easier. I'm with you. Like, I agree.
Yeah.
Like, it was easier. You went through it, so it felt
Mm-hmm.
more settled.
Yeah. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, they're wearing masks. That's protocol. And those things that were shocking when it first came out. It's like, oh yeah, no, that's what they do now. So I think it
Yeah.
really changed perspective as well, just in terms of the films. I think when you saw it originally, how you felt is going to be way different than seeing it now.
Yes. It felt scarier. That's one thing about horror movies, right? They're playing
Mm-hmm.
on our fear of something we don't know that we haven't experienced. And
Mm-hmm.
then when we experience, we're like, okay, I
Yeah.
have more room for this
Mm-hmm.
material because I know this material than, oh, I don't know this. This is scary.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and hey, if you're listening, if you are enjoying this episode and you want us to talk more about, pandemic type movies like Contagion or something like that, or if you want us to go old school and talk about like craziness like the movie Zombie, let us know. What do you want to hear? What do you want to know about? What have you watched that has stayed with you? What have you seen that freaked you out the first time but was much easier the next go around? Let us know. We'd love to hear it. And also, don't forget to eat your coffin cookies, drink your buruha brew, and howl at the moon. And until next time,
Like, subscribe, follow. Thanks for watching and listening. We'll see you at the next one.
bye bye.
Bye.